Welcome to the Agile 5-minute question time. Are you getting ready for the PMP exam? Then these questions from your friend Phil will help you master the core concepts of not only Scrum but also Agile. Let's get started and be sure to hit the bell icon for notification whenever another PMP video is available. Okay, Phil, are you ready?
You bet, buddy. I am ready. And thank you very much for your positive mental attitude and optimism. Indeed, a lot of people have been trying to get certified in 2021. And believe it or not, some folks are still finding it hard because Agile is a curveball for them. So the intent is to work with a team and for them to give some scenarios that get you warmed up to the concepts of Scrum and Agile. So let's go ahead and hear from the team and check out a few scenarios.
The team is conducting a review meeting with the product owner, and there are disagreements about whether the deliverables, the product increment, for the iteration are acceptable. What step was not adequately completed?
All right, we normally have a countdown. So 3, 2, and 1. Let's take a look.
Now, taking a look at this question one more time, it reads, the team is conducting a review meeting with the product owner, and there are disagreements about whether the deliverables, in other words, product increment, for the iteration are acceptable. Did you notice that this is not talking about user stories? This is talking about the increment. So this question is really a test of the understanding of acceptance criteria for individual user stories versus an understanding of the definition of done, which cuts across the entire increment. Let's examine the definition of done and what acceptance criteria means from the Agile Alliance. Acceptance criteria is used to test the validity of a user story. The given when-then formula is a template intended to guide the writing of acceptance tests for a user story. Given some context, when some action is carried out, then a particular set of observable consequences should obtain. For example, given my bank account is in credit and I made no withdrawals recently, when I attempt to withdraw an amount less than my card's limit, then the withdrawal should complete without errors or warnings. Let's examine the definition of done. Let's read from the Agile Alliance. The team agrees on and displays prominently somewhere in the team room a list of criteria that must be met before a product increment is considered done. Failure to meet these criteria at the end of a sprint normally implies that the work should not be counted towards that sprint's velocity. Now, with our understanding of the difference between the definition of done and acceptance criteria, from this question, we can see that what is at play here is not acceptance criteria. It is really the definition of done. And that is why the best answer is D. The definition of done was not properly addressed. Now, there are other clues as to why the answer would still not be any of the other solutions offered. Take a look at option A. The scope statement mentioned is not a legitimate addition in the world of Agile. Taking a look at the other options, the product owner is not solely responsible for every single piece of acceptance criteria. Let's even say you misread it and you couldn't decipher that it was talking about definition of done. You can read between the lines to observe that some of these things are not truly agile, such as saying acceptance criteria is in a project scope statement. Taking a look at option B that says retrospectives were not held, we know that acceptance criteria, even if we made a mistake in reading the question, retrospective meetings are not where acceptance criteria is collected anyway or written. So it was pointing to C or D, and that should have narrowed down your focus to really ask the question, which of these is true? Which of these is most likely going to be the reason? When it comes to the responsibility of acceptance criteria, it would be inaccurate to say the product owner always defines the acceptance criteria for every single story in isolation. And that should have been a wake-up call as to, are you sure they're talking about acceptance criteria? All right, I hope that explains it. Let's move on.
The Agile team expresses items of work in terms of a user story. A well-written user story must follow the 3 C's. Which of the following best describes the criteria for a well-written story?
So taking a look at the options, we know that the word customer should not be in the array. We know that it has the word card in it. So which one has the word card in it, but does not have the word customer? So we see customer here, confirmation card and customer. That's not right. This one has customer in it. That's not right. And D says customer correctness confirmation. So right off the bat, if you know what you're looking for, you would choose C. So the right answer, you can see, is card, conversation, and confirmation. And the reason is a user story starts with a card. The card concept started as a 3x5 index card, and this was used to keep the user story. Then it progresses from a card, we go into a conversation with the end users, we find out more details, and the confirmation is all about the back of the card. We confirm that indeed it has been met. And that's the card, conversation, and confirmation. Let's move on to the next one.
During the 5th sprint, the team has a huge influx of change requests for their video game machine. They should do what within the sprint?
All right. Be sure to hit the pause button if you need more time. 3, 2, and 1. So, as you might have heard on this channel many a time, once the sprint is in motion and airborne, you should not A, encourage copious change. Don't do that once you are within the sprint. Let change happen normally and naturally outside of the sprint. But once you are within the sprint, you're definitely not going to encourage copious change. Watch those words. Let's go to option D. D says forbid any changes. And that is a pretty strong word. When you say forbid, that means never, ever, ever. And that is not reality in a world of Agile. There's definitely going to be situations where there is change that needs to absolutely happen right then, but we do not forbid any changes. Let's take a look at option C. Encourage moderate change. Now think about it. Within the sprint, what have you done? Remember, the sprint is a container, and the very first thing you do within the sprint is you do the planning of the sprint. So in sprint planning, what do? You have the courage to make commitments to getting the work done. And there's certain things that you say you will get done and other team members say they will get done. Well, if there's change, how are they going to meet their promise? How are they going to meet the commitment? So while the team sets out in good faith, it would be foolish to encourage any type of change within the sprint, knowing fully well that they've budgeted to their capacity, they've estimated to their capacity. So C is not an appropriate response. The best answer here is to discourage change. We discourage change. We know it could happen, but the best disposition is to discourage it. And when people understand that you've made a commitment to get such and such amount of story points done, and what they're bringing is a distraction, they'll change their behavior and only ask for changes when it is absolutely necessary. And you do know that every change within the sprint, it must go through the product owner. If the product owner says no, that's it. The product owner role must be respected in the organization. All right, let's move ahead. Please move to the next one.
Your team has just completed an agile transformation. In the middle of a daily stand-up meeting, Boris, the project manager from the PMO, bursts in, talking loudly on his phone, demanding status. The Scrum Master is not in attendance. What should you do as a developer? A. Tell him PMs are not needed in Agile and he is an intruder. Report to the Scrum Master. B. Ask the team to quickly give status to Boris and then advise him to leave. C. Report the matter to the PMO and offer coaching. Boris needs help. D. Ask him to wait until the Scrum is completed to address his concerns.
Well, this one, we will give you a few more seconds because it is one of those trick questions. 3, 2, and 1. So the answer to this one, we will get by using the process of elimination. Boris is a project manager. He obviously has some clout in the firm, but he bursts into this daily stand-up meeting. In other words, the daily scrum. And you do know the cardinal rule of the daily scrum is not to allow interruptions. So how do you balance that? You're not the scrum master, you're a developer, but as you know, the scrum master does not have to be in attendance in the daily scrum, except the team requests the scrum master to be. But we encourage scrum masters to allow the team to breathe and grow so that with or without them, the team will get the daily scrum done and the scrum master will coach other teams to get to that level and coach other teams to get to that level. And that's the idea, not to be a babysitter. So in this case, the scrum master is not in attendance. So should you A, tell him PMs are not needed in Agile and he's an intruder? Oh my goodness, you don't want to do that. That not only is disrespectful, not acting in the ethos of being Agile, right? Because it's an opportunity for him to receive some sort of coaching and mentoring. It's a signal that he doesn't really understand what is going on. So we're not going to tell him that he's not needed and he's an intruder. Reporting to the Scrum Master is not a bad thing, but the first part invalidates what came next. Option B, tell the team to quickly give status to Boris and then advise him to leave. Again, this is not acting in the integrity and ethos of Agile. Interrupting the daily Scrum is disrespectful and it's not the right thing to do. So you shouldn't ask your colleagues to quickly give status. Remember, you're a developer like your colleagues. That is not the best thing to do. Now you're left with C and D. C, report the matter to the PMO. Well, you obviously cannot report the matter to the PMO, and you cannot offer coaching right now. Now, while it's a good gesture to offer coaching in the future, and saying Boris needs help, you will not report the matter to the PMO right now. In fact, reporting to the PMO is not exactly the way to proceed. We prefer dealing one-on-one as much as possible with our stakeholders and not going through red tape and hierarchy. Let's look at D. Ask him to wait until the Scrum is completed to address his concerns. Now, C is not going to solve the problem right now. If Boris knows he'll get what he's looking for at the end of the daily Scrum to address his concerns, that is a bit more respectful than A, a lot more respectful than A. And at the same time, it will also be an opportunity for you to have a word with Boris, perhaps. And if not, for you after D to report to the Scrum Master. But that is not part of the option. And that is why it could be very tempting to want to go with A and want to go with C. But the right response is to address his concerns, ask him to wait until the daily Scrum is over. There's nothing wrong in that. I know he shouldn't have been in attendance in the first place, or maybe he should. We don't know. Maybe he was invited. We don't know. It says he burst in on his phone, or who knows? But anyway, the most respectful and proactive thing to do when you have someone in authority burst into your daily Scrum, interrupting, you ask them to wait. That's the most respectful thing to do. And that concludes our final question for today. I hope you found that to be informative. I hope you found it to be useful. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of the 5-minute question time. And don't forget, we have a lot more of these coming up in the future.
God bless your hard work on your PMP exam journey. Many colleagues have had troubles on this journey, but do not worry. Keep working hard and you will succeed. Remember to hit like and subscribe to be notified of other adventures. See you again very soon. Alvida.